Now we look at the last disciple that we have to consider here. Of course, we have not looked at all the disciples, but have picked on the disciples who had some sins and some issue going on, some that are worth reading. And so we're looking at Judas Iscariot now as the last disciple that we have to look at, and it's going to be a short one. Now, Judas was the treasurer of the ministry of Jesus. He was the treasurer of the ministry of Jesus as recorded in John chapter 12, verse 4 to 6. John chapter 12, verse 4 to 6. Now, verse 4, the Bible reads, Then one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was about to betray him, said, Why wasn't this perfume sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? He didn't say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He was in charge of the money bag and would steal part of what was put in it. Wow! I told you something that Jesus actually picked disciples from all walks of life with different personality traits, and among them was a thief. Judas was stealing from the money bag. He was stealing from the treasury. So when we have congregations and churches where people talk about the treasurer picking and stealing and taking something from the treasury box of the church, you have to know that that is not a new thing. It also happened in the ministry of Jesus Christ. We also know that Judas was a thief as recorded, and we also know that he pretended to love the poor. You see, when he said, why was the perfume and have it broken and anoint the feet of Jesus and wipe it with the, why just waste it like that? You know, it shows us that we have to be wise about people that actually try and show that they love the poor. Sometimes it's because from giving to the poor, he was holding the money back. So it meant that if they had sold that perfume and put the money in the bag, he was going to steal from it. He was going to benefit from it. So not everyone that pretends to love the poor and talks about the donations are actually in love with the poor. They actually just know that they will have a part in the donations, in the donated things. And so it's interesting to actually look at Judas from this point and also to examine ourselves to say, do we sincerely love the poor? Because some people would be like, I love the poor, I want to take care of the orphans. But in essence, they are looking at if donations are given, the cars are brought, and all that is given, they will be benefiting from that, and they will build houses and enrich themselves. So is the character of Judas Iscariot in this case. We also know that Judas betrayed Jesus for the love of money. So we can see the extent that the love of money took him. That later he hung himself, as recorded in Matthew chapter 26, verse 47. And we're going to read this. Matthew chapter 26, verse 47 to 56. Matthew 26. Matthew 26, verse 47 to 56. The Bible reads, While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, suddenly arrived. A large mob with swords and clubs was with him from the chief priests and elders of the people. His betrayer and given them a sign. The one I kiss is the one. Arrest him. So immediately he went up to Jesus and said, Greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. Verse 50. Now look at what Jesus told and what he said to Judas. Friend, Jesus asked him, Why have you come? Then they came up, took hold of Jesus and arrested him. Now you can see how that he betrayed Jesus with a kiss. Now look at chapter 27, verse 3. Chapter 27, verse 3 to 10. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that Jesus had been condemned, was full of remorse and retained the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. I have sinned by betraying innocent blood, he said. What's that to us? They said. See to it yourself. So he threw the silver into the temple and departed. Then he went and hanged himself. The chief priest took the silver and said, It's not permitted to put it into the temple treasury, since it is blood money. They conferred together and bought the potter's field with it as a burial place for foreigners. Therefore, that field has been called Blood Field to this day. So the burial place for foreigners that they bought with that blood money is called the Blood Field to this day. Then what was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him whose price was set by the Israelites, and they gave them to the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. So now we can see how Judas betrayed Jesus with a kiss, and even the money that he got, he became remorseful that he took the 30 pieces of silver back to the priests in the temple. He couldn't even hold or use it. He threw the pieces of silver at them in the temple, I beg your pardon, in the temple, and left the temple, went and hanged himself. And they got 30 pieces of silver, and they said, we know we cannot use this because it's not permitted for us to use such money and put it in the temple coffers. And so they got that and bought a field, and that money was called blood money. And they bought a field for as burial site for foreigners, and that place that they bought was called Blood Field to this date. So we can see this short life story or short history on Judas, concerning Judas and his relationship, and how that the love of money all through it made him a thief to a point where even betrayed Jesus for the money that he didn't even use, and his life ended in a very, very terrible way. However, we are shown that this was prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah. His death was prophesied, everything that happened. As we always recall that whatever Jesus did was the fulfillment of what was written in the books of the prophet. And whatever happened to Jesus was a fulfillment of everything that was written in the books of the prophets. And so this is the last lesson in this first unit, as we have looked at Judas as the last disciple that worked with Jesus amongst the other disciples. Of course, we picked only a number of them according to what has been written, the written accounts on the disciples, and also what we can learn from them. Do stay with us and also join me as we get to Unit 2, because we have concluded the first unit today. And if you have done that now, you are ready to write the test. You are ready to attempt the test of Unit 1. And remember that all the marks will be compiled to actually see that you have cleared or not cleared. It is my prayer that you'll be able to clear all the tests and make progress in your ministry of discipleship. God bless you.